Hi, my name is Kyle and I'm a musician and composer. I have a degree in film scoring and many years of experience producing music and composing score for film. Over the years, I've worked sporadically with other artists and created music for various visual media. I've also written a ton of music for myself, but due to a combination of factors, I never properly commercially released anything of my own. One of the biggest factors is probably my overly ambitious nature. I tend to write a lot of complex, conceptual music with way too many layers of instrumentation, and it becomes overwhelming to actually record and produce most of it. Compounded with my obsessive perfectionism, I just couldn't bring myself to release anything that wasn't up to my unrealistic standards for what I could personally produce by myself. I've spent the last few years composing music and lyrics for a deeply personal album, exploring my struggles with depression, and I intended for it to be my first real release. It's probably the most overly ambitious thing I've ever tried to do, as completing it would involve a lot of time spent recording a ridiculous amount of guitar and vocal layers for each song, writing full orchestral accompaniment for each song, and dealing with the headache of mixing an entire album's worth of songs, with overwhelming track counts and hundreds of parts playing simultaneously. It's not something I'm unwilling or unable to tackle, but due to the amount of time involved in this process, I was looking into applying for grant funding so I could properly devote my time to this project. But then, while researching my options, I learned that for most grant programs, you have to be a professional artist. Now, to be considered a professional artist, there are a few different criteria, but the one that particularly stuck out to me is that you must have a history of public presentation, and in some cases, it specifies that you must have had at least one commercially released song for the past few years. This really hammered home the fact that I've never actually released any material of my own. I haven't performed in public in many years, and I have absolutely no public presence as a musician. While I never really did music full-time, I've still always considered myself to be a professional musician. And yeah, I've made a little bit of money off my music over the years, whether it was from producing for other artists, writing scores for small indie films, or whatever random opportunities came my way. But I've never properly tried to truly publicly present myself as an artist. And there's no real reason for anyone, especially a grant committee, to take me seriously as an artist. So this brings me to the impetus behind this whole thing. I've decided that I'm going to finally force myself over the hump, and I'm going to give myself a hard deadline to work with. I'm going to record and commercially release a professional quality track from start to finish over the next 2 weeks. Instead of trying to go straight to climbing the mountain that is my overly complex concept album without any practice, I want to warm up by tackling a smaller hill first. Something a bit more manageable, in the form of a single. While I do have a bunch of experience recording and producing music, I know I'll inevitably learn a lot over the whole process of commercially releasing a professional single of my own, because there's a certain point in that process that I've just not experienced yet. I'll also hopefully get better at using social media to establish my presence as an artist, because that's another aspect of this that I have absolutely no experience with. So I hope to take the knowledge and momentum I gained from releasing this first single and use it to keep learning and keep releasing music until I finally feel ready to tackle the massive undertaking that is my debut album. Maybe I'll even get to a point where I can be taken seriously enough to get funding for it. I've decided to take one of the many songs I've already written over the years and properly produce it, so I'll be skipping over the initial songwriting part and won't be starting totally from scratch, but I intend to complete every other part of the process myself over the next 2 weeks. This means recording all my guitar and vocal parts, composing additional instrumentation, mixing and mastering the song, registering the song with my PRO, in my case it's SoCan, and then finally finding a distributor and publicly releasing the track on streaming services. Plus, I'm sure there are a bunch of other steps that I'm either forgetting or haven't discovered yet. I picked an older song that is relatively simple and straightforward compared to the more over-the-top style I've gravitated towards in recent years, and it has the added bonus of coincidentally being thematically relevant to this whole project idea. I still want to present it in a way that represents where I'm currently at as an artist, and I'm going to do my best to incorporate some of the stylistic signatures I've developed over the years, but I'm going to limit myself to what I can actually manage to do in the allotted time. I know it's not going to be perfect, and there will be so many things I won't be happy with, but I'm going to force myself to get over my perfectionism so I can actually start building toward a real career as a professional musician. So join me on my journey over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to do my best to post frequent updates on the whole process, but please bear with me as I'm not particularly experienced with social media. Not yet, at least. I'm sure it'll be a pretty grueling process, but hopefully by the end of this 2 weeks, I can finally be officially considered a professional musician.